Hey guys, it's Celestia, and today I'm going to tell you the increasingly unbelievable story about how my relatively nice, normal landlord turned into what can only be accurately referred to as an unhinged maniac who evicted my wife and I without notice, bribed us, and then tried to scam us out of $200. Actually, still is trying to scam us out of $200 because this woman is, at this point, just actively harassing us. And let's just get right into the story of how, because honestly, I've been dying to talk about this for months now and haven't been able to, because number one, moving took up all of my time and I just didn't have a chance to, and number two, every time I think my notes for this script are done and I can finally start writing it, she does something even more insane than the last thing, to the point that I'm just sitting here wondering not only when this circus show is gonna end, but also just how inconceivably bad it's gonna get before it does. But I can't wait anymore. This is living rent-free in my head and I have to tell you guys about it or I'm gonna lose my mind. If her reign of terror continues like she's threatening for it to, I might make a part 2 of this story time, but for now I think there's more than enough unbelievable garbage to talk about already. First though, a little disclaimer, because I know she watches my channel and is just insane enough to try to sue me for defamation just for talking about this, so I will not be using her real name or giving any identifying information about her. I'll be changing her name to Karen because it's the most obnoxious name I can think of offhand. So, Karen, if you're watching this, you've got about as much grounds to sue me as you do to try to find me $200 as a punishment, which is effectively to say that I challenge you to find a lawyer who wouldn't laugh you out of their office. But we'll get into that. First, let's set the scene. It's February of 2021, and my wife and I have just moved to another city. This was for a multitude of reasons, but regardless of why, it was something that was both really exciting and really scary. What made it scarier was that up until that point, we had only rented apartments from actual rental companies. And this time, we were renting a condo unit from one individual landlord, that being Karen. This immediately made me anxious and uncomfortable because there's a lot less security in that, and there's also a lot less professional standards that individual landlords are held to, or at least those that can be adequately enforced. But Karen, in the beginning, actually seemed really nice, and for the first year or so of living there, she genuinely was, and that put me at ease. One thing that did strike me as creepy and uncomfortable was that on our move-in day, she told me that she had found my YouTube channel and watched my videos, and I get it. You want to research your tenants before approving their application, you want to know who's going to be living in your property. That's fine, that's normal, whatever. But first of all, she had already long since approved our application, so I don't really see why she was doing that much research even after it was impossible for her to not let us have the place. And second of all, at that time, my channel didn't even have 1,000 subscribers. It did not come up when you Googled my name, or even my name with the city I was from originally. I tested it because she told me that. I also hadn't told her about my channel in the application or the showing, but just that I was an illustrator when she asked about my job, because at that point my channel wasn't monetized and had pretty much no relevance to my employment. It wouldn't have been impossible to find, but it would have required some serious digging, and I just still find it pretty creepy and strange that she went that far. Regardless, I dismissed it at the time because what the hell else was I supposed to do, and she actually ended up commissioning me for some custom t-shirts based on the art of mine that she found as a result, so it wasn't all bad. And things were really great for the first year. She was professional, left us nice little footnotes on our rent receipts telling us to enjoy our weekends or holidays or whatever else, and even gave us a $50 skip the dishes gift card for Christmas. She went above and beyond one time too, like, I still don't know how much YouTube will let me talk about the pandemic, so I'll be vague, but our upstairs neighbor got sick with the thing, and given that we shared our air vents with him, we were a little worried about that. So she went out and bought a much higher quality air filter and installed it for us just to give us a little more peace of mind. Like, at this point, we both thought she was a pretty great landlord, at least within the confines of, you know, being a landlord, given that they're all just basically assholes by default. Here's a second thought video in the card above about why they're all effectively exploitative bottom feeders if you're interested. But anyway, after the first year, things started gradually getting worse. First of all, for context, the unit of the condo that we were renting was one of 6 in the building, meaning there were a minimum of 7 tenants living there, my wife and I included. There were only 4 garbage bins and no recycling, and garbage was only picked up once a week. 4 garbage bins for 7 tenants. Those bins were constantly overflowing, and there was literally no way for all of us to reasonably produce little enough garbage to avoid it. Her response was not to add more garbage bins like a reasonable human being. It was to chastise us for leaving garbage bags outside of the bins because they were full and we had no alternative, and told us that if we couldn't fit the garbage into the bins, we had to keep it in our home until the bins were empty. And the bins were empty for all of 1 minute every week while every tenant rushed out like feral raccoons to fill them, which is actually probably the opposite of what a feral raccoon would do. Are there even raccoons that aren't feral, like domesticated? Why is this in the script? Jesus Jesus. Okay, moving on. She also chastised us for a noise complaint we got, which is rich for so many reasons. Because, okay, as many of you know, I have a chronic illness that leaves my health generally very poor and often unstable. One night, circumstances that aren't relevant and that I'd rather not discuss left my health bad enough that it was an emergency, and I had to call an ambulance as a result. But I passed out before the ambulance got there, and my wife was asleep, which meant that when the paramedics got there, they were unable to actually get to me. So they were banging on the door and yelling to try to get me to wake up and let them in. I didn't, but eventually my wife did wake up and open the door, and that was that. Karen, the pillar of kindness and understanding that she is, genuinely issued a noise complaint because of the banging and yelling that occurred exclusively because of a health emergency and my physical inability to remain conscious. But when we tried to submit a noise complaint weeks prior to this because the shitty Airbnb unit that was our neighbor threw an unbelievably loud party until 4 in the morning, we were told to drop it because the owner of that Airbnb was a really nice person. So, you know, really fair stuff all around, equal standards. We also tried to make a complaint against another neighbor because, okay, for more context, the walls in this building were paper thin, and you could pretty much hear everything that went down in the units directly adjacent to yours. So this neighbor, who I'll call Becky because that's next on the list of obnoxious generic names, no offense to any Beckys out there, was very easy to overhear as she verbally and physically mistreated her animals. I don't want to go into detail because it's legitimately just very upsetting and I don't want you guys to have to hear about it, but not only did we hear clear and constant evidence of severe abuse of her dog and cat, she even admitted it to me herself when I banged on her door and confronted her about it after calling the cops did nothing, since she also admitted to pretending she wasn't home so she didn't have to let them in. I reported her to the Humane Society as well, who also did nothing, and then I also complained to Karen about her. Karen then told me that she definitely wasn't hurting her pets because she had a very expensive vet bill for her dog that apparently proved that she wasn't hurting him. I still don't understand this defense at all because if anything, that vet bill was probably a result of her hurting him, but Karen insisted that it was definitely just a misunderstanding and nothing could or should be done about it. So for the rest of the time we lived there, we basically just had to listen to the way this horrible excuse for a human being treated these animals, unable to do literally anything about it. And she's probably still doing it because no one, including Karen, seems to care. Anyway, about midway through our second year of living there, the building went up for sale. Now, she wasn't the building owner or manager, she just owned and subletted the unit in it that we were renting, so this was not her call. That said, she did know about it before we agreed to sign another year's lease and deliberately chose not to tell us. And given that I never would have signed another year's lease if I had known the building was going up for sale, I was not particularly pleased about that. But that was just the beginning of my list of grievances resulting from this sale, because she proceeded to then harass us to let them do showings of our unit specifically without us being there, despite knowing that I'm agoraphobic and I can't just leave my home and let a bunch of strangers into it. We said no because she had no legal right to do that, but she kept asking over and over and getting seriously pissed off at us for declining. She also inexplicably decided around this time that it was her place to effectively tell us that we should go to college in an email out of nowhere that basically demeaned us both for not having done so and implying that we needed to turn our lives around, which was interesting. She's interesting. Very appropriate. Anyway, fast forward to this December, a couple days after my birthday, when Karen decided to give me the generous gift of eviction. See, our washer and dryer needed repairs, so she and her boyfriend came by to make those repairs and decided that this was a great time to, while I wasn't even there and it was just my wife, flippantly inform her that she wants us out immediately so that she can move her parents into our unit. This is where things get a little murky legally, so bear with me while I explain how she justified this. Our year-long lease was gonna be up on February 1st of 2023, but that lease also maintained that after it expired, we would enter into a month-to-month arrangement or renew the lease. So the intention was never for us to leave on February 1st, and it was explicitly agreed upon, in fact, that we would continue to live there. She told us that that would no longer be the case and that she wanted us out immediately on February 1st. Legally, in my province, and I think in most places, you have to give your tenants 3 months notice before evicting them, and given that she was telling us on the second week of December that she wanted us out on the first day of February, that wasn't even a full 2 months notice. But technically, because our lease did expire on February 1st, I think she might actually have had the legal right to tell us to get out then, because by way of signing the lease, we already had the notice of when it expired. But I also think that because the lease did say that we would just enter into a month-by-month arrangement when it expired, she might not have that right, because this legally binding paper specifically said that our tenancy there would continue after that month. But like I said, it's a really murky, unclear legal area where I genuinely don't know for sure what rights either of us actually had there. And taking legal action against her was not only something we couldn't afford, but was also something where a court may have ruled against us anyway as a result of that lack of clarity. So, shitty or not, we basically had to take that for what it was and agree to be out by February 1st. But then she started harassing us to leave sooner. She also changed her story. She didn't want to move her parents into our unit. That was apparently just something she made up to sound more sympathetic, I guess. And she instead just wanted to sell it. Apparently it's a seller's market right now because the movers we hired later on said they'd seen a lot of landlords doing this and screwing over their tenants in the process recently, so that's cool. Anyway, she then kindly referred to both my agoraphobia and schizophrenia as a lifestyle that would make arranging showings for that sale difficult. And as a result, she wanted us out immediately instead of when our lease ran out. She told us that whether we left or not, she was gonna start doing showings of the unit in late January. So if we don't like it, we shouldn't still be there. She then bribed us with partial rent refunds if we left earlier, knowing that with the costs that would come from having to move right around Christmas with no notice after we'd already bought our gifts, we would effectively have no choice but to accept. And we did. So now, unfortunately, because we did take her bribe to leave before January 15th, we 100% have no legal standing to take action against her. I have to commend her careful manipulation of the situation, honestly. She really thought it through, and it worked, because she screwed us over very effectively and covered her own ass in the process. It was a shitty, terrifying situation, and I'm not gonna lie. Spending the holiday season frantically scrambling to find a new place to live, draining my savings, having daily panic attacks, being forced to go out all the time to see places, and trying to do my job despite all of that and packing and making moving arrangements, it almost broke me mentally, and it's still something I'm trying to recover from now. And Karen had the audacity to openly pat herself on the back for being generous enough to offer that bribe to help us through this tough time that she violated our rights and harassed us into. And she ended that email off with "stay warm" while evicting us without notice in the coldest month of the year. Classy, classy stuff. So then we're getting ready to move out. We're planning on moving on the 14th, and I tell her that we'd like to do the move out inspection on the 16th so that we can spend the 15th cleaning the place. She declines and says that we can have half the day on the 15th to clean and that she'll be doing the inspection that evening. At this point, I'm having like 6 panic attacks per minute. Moving and packing has left me in agony from microfractures in my bones because my doctor thinks I have early onset osteoporosis due to my malnutrition and chronic illness, and I am subsequently unable to help with the cleaning. So my wife, alone, gets up early and spends the whole day on the 15th deep cleaning the entire condo. And I know how she cleans. I know she did a great job. But Karen, being Karen, shows up to the inspection half an hour early before she has time to finish everything, because of course she does, and then nitpicks literally every single flaw to avoid giving us back as much of our deposit as she can. She even tells my wife to basically get on her hands and knees and scrub the kitchen floor because it's not clean enough and just a surface cleaning of it isn't enough. And like, her kitchen tile, because of its color and pattern, literally always looks dirty. No amount of deep cleaning is gonna make your shitty, dirt-colored kitchen floor look clean, Karen, and you know that. But that was enough for her to fine us $75 apparently, and then tell my wife that she had to leave, but would be back in half an hour, and she sure hoped the floors would be actually clean by then. She then proceeded to get into her car, drive slightly up the street where she thought my wife couldn't see her, and sit idly in that car with her boyfriend and watch my wife to make sure she was still cleaning. I didn't even know what to say when she came home and told me that. Like, she felt so unsafe and uncomfortable during the inspection and while Karen was watching her from the car like it was some kind of high-stakes sting operation that she left as soon as she possibly could just to get away from her. And it makes me so unbelievably angry. But now we're out, we're away from her, and we're safe at our new place. The reign of terror is over. No more Karen. Or so you would think, but apparently not. Because as of a couple days ago when I'm scripting this, we got another email from her. And it might be the most unhinged thing she's ever done. First of all though, she titled the email "Action Required Payment for Illegal Dumpling," which, I'm not gonna lie, was a typo that made the whole thing vastly more bearable just by being there. But she opens this email by dead naming my wife, who she had always referred to by her preferred name before, and informing us that because we supposedly illegally dumped garbage, we now owe her a fine of $200. And just let me read this to you verbatim. The picture attached is taken on January 22nd, 2023, in a week before you moved out of the unit. That's already wrong. Just to interject real quick here, we moved out on the 14th, as I mentioned, so the garbage already physically could not have been ours. But anyway, continuing. Going through the material, we found cat hairs that came from your pets. You have been proven to be the people who dumped the garbage at the mentioned property without consent. Your dishonest and disrespectful behavior is not acceptable. I therefore demand your payment to cover the dumping cost, and as your punishment, please e-transfer the payment to this email address by February 1st, 2023 to avoid further actions. And I don't even know where to begin unpacking all of that. Like I said, based on the timeline alone, it's impossible for that garbage to be ours. But she went through the garbage and found cat hairs? Is this CSI Detective Karen? Number one, I know for sure that at least one other tenant has pets, that being bitch-ass Becky. So the presence of animal hair does not prove us to be the owners of that garbage. It was probably hers. Number two, both of the cats that she was actually aware of us having are deceased. When we moved in, we had two cats named Bella and Stevie. Bella was a pure white long-haired cat, and Stevie was a brown and white tabby. Over the past year, Bella unfortunately passed away from gastrointestinal issues, and Stevie unfortunately passed away shortly thereafter from cancer. We adopted another cat, Cheddar, after Bella passed away because Stevie was lonely and sad, and then when Stevie passed away, we adopted another cat, Mink, because Cheddar was now lonely and sad. We didn't update Karen about this because legally speaking, it made no difference. We paid a pet deposit for two cats, and we still had two cats. There was never a period of time where there were more than two, warranting another deposit, so it was never relevant to update her. It wasn't her business. But what that means in terms of this specifically is that she is claiming to have been able to link us to this garbage through the presence of cat hair that came from a white long-haired cat and a brown and white tabby cat. But the only cats we've had for months at this point are bright orange and pure black. So it's impossible on every single level for this to be true. It's just a blatant lie to entrap us into admitting ownership of some garbage that isn't ours. And charging us $200 not only as a dumping fee, but specifically as punishment for our dishonest and disrespectful behavior? I don't even know what to say to that. Like, holy shit. I genuinely cannot imagine being the particular variety of insane required to think that any of that is anything less than unhinged. Who does that? Who says that? I'm not gonna lie, I had a panic attack as soon as I saw the email, and I called my dad, who used to be a lawyer and who did a lot of real estate law, and pretty frantically asked him what to do. He's awesome, and he talked me through the panic attack and told me that since she'd already done the move-out inspection and given us back our deposit, she had legally acknowledged that the place was in adequate condition when we left it, without garbage, and had no right at all whatsoever to claim random garbage she found thereafter as ours and fine us for it. He also made the really good point that she knows I'm mentally ill and very easily panicked and scared, and she was probably trying to use that to get as much out of me as she could financially. Like, she probably thought I'd be so scared and panicked by the threat of further action that I'd just give in and pay her, effectively trying to scam me with a goddamn shakedown. He said he'd seen it used as a tactic before, but never by someone so stupid that they did it after already giving back the deposit and completing the inspection, which speaks even more to the degree of crazy that Karen actually is. It's January 31st as of writing this, and honestly, despite knowing that she has absolutely no legal right to charge us this ridiculous fee, I am still very anxious about what she's gonna do tomorrow, which is February 1st, her redundant deadline for us to pay her before she, quote-unquote, takes action. We're ghosting her indefinitely because we obviously don't owe her shit, and she has no right to try to scam us out of this money, but I don't doubt that she's gonna start harassing us regularly over this, and I'm legitimately looking into filing a restraining order if she does. It's a difficult, complicated, time-consuming process, but it's more than worth it for the peace of mind that will come from never having to hear from this woman again if she does decide to keep this up. For now though, that's where this ridiculous story time comes to an end. We're done moving now and finally almost completely set up in our new place, which is an apartment rented from a rental company again because God knows this whole ordeal has traumatized me out of ever renting from an individual again. It's smaller than our previous place, but it's also way nicer, and more importantly, it's safe, and I can finally feel secure in my home again. It also has the added benefit of being directly above a coffee shop where I'm writing this script, and having a rooftop patio where I'm inevitably gonna spend all summer painting, so it's a win all around. I'll be doing a video apartment tour for patrons on my Patreon as soon as things are completely set up, so if you want to see that, go check it out, it'll be up soon. Anyway, in conclusion, get f***ed, Karen. Thanks for emptying my my savings and giving me a nervous breakdown. I wished you the worst from the very bottom of my heart. But thank you to all of those of you who are following this situation on my Twitter before this video, because I'd rather end on a positive note in all seriousness. So many of you donated to my Ko-fi to help with moving costs, reached out with kind words and support, and stuck with me while content was put on hold to accommodate the whole situation. You guys made a terrifying situation much less scary, and I felt so much less lost and alone. So thank you so much. I'm safe and in a lovely new home with my wife now, and I'm finally able to start recovering from this whole thing. And that's in part because of that support. I'm looking forward to throwing myself back into my content now that I can again, and I hope you guys enjoy all of the new videos I'll be making in the coming months. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this ridiculous adventure we embarked upon today. If you guys have any crazy landlord experiences to share, please do so in the comments. I've never met a good landlord, and I know Karen can't be the only one that's out here just devoting her life to ruining others via the unacceptable power imbalance between landlords and tenants resulting from the unforgiving state of late-stage capitalism. So please share your own stories and we can roast them all together. Special thank you as always to channel members Cafe Soleil, Joseph Solomon, and Lotus Streams Art, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, Unity, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, Elenkshi, Soul Crystal, Kim Yen, Shamil Sheep, Crazy Hisar, Gentong, Jacobus Peterson, Grayson Xavier, Ty Finch 94, Milkbean, Eeyore Heehaw, and MG for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.